Senator Schumer gets it, and he gets it exactly right. And what's interesting about Senator Schumer is he organized the Gang of Four, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, himself and Heinrich, and Rounds and Young. And together, they really have built a rare thing in Washington in the Senate. And this resulted in the first of 3 hearings last week, which I was fortunate to be one of the testimonials, whatever it is, at. There'll be more. And I think there's a reasonable chance, these are my words, not anybody else's, that by the end of the year, the U.S. will have a conception of how we want to deal with this technology. I want to begin my talk by thanking a whole bunch of people putting this together. Illy, who's here, Joe, who organized it, Angela, Jennifer, Mike, Hina, and the rest of the SCSP team. Thank you all very much for putting this on. So I think I don't need to tell this audience that this is an important time to be doing what you all are doing. And I think the simplest way to understand this is to take a look at what's happening in Ukraine. I've been there quite a few times. I'm going there next week. I'm working to the degree that I can to help as a private citizen. And as a computer scientist, when I look at Ukraine, what I see is an opportunity for the use of AI to help win the war. And I think everybody here knows that basically you have a more traditional land-based conflict. Both sides are dug in. It's difficult to make progress on both sides. The Ukraine folks are building a new method of war around autonomy and drones. In my previous work with a number of people in the audience, we talked about this, where you can see it actually playing out in real conflict, unfortunately, in the last year and a half. Today, there are a few hundred drone companies in Ukraine, and they fundamentally lack one thing, which is they lack AI. So one way for you to think about things that you could do to be helpful would be to try to get more AI technology into the hands of the people on the Ukraine side. There are many ways of doing that. For example, helping them with software, helping them with training, helping them with knowledge, helping them with education, helping them with more computer scientists. But my own view is that ultimately AI, this will be a war where the Ukraine folks will win because they ultimately use these tools that I'm going to talk about in a minute for their defense and ultimately to remain independent, which is a huge priority, I know, for everybody in the room. This is why I wear my pin all day, my Ukraine and US pin. If you take a look at AI where we are now, we have these extraordinary breakthroughs in terms of LLMs and frontier models, as they know. And everybody knows that I'm talking about GPT-4, Anthropic. We had the minister from the UAE here, Falcon. 2 looks like it's competitive or better than the best of the open source models. They've done a fantastic job. Llama 2 is now out from Meta, of course, very, very good, very well trained. We've set up a very, very interesting competition in the US among all of these players with huge stakes for them as businesses, but also for huge stakes for us as a nation. So what I want you to think about is I want you to think about the promise of this in the following way. I want you to think about, can you imagine if we had an AI doctor that made our current doctors more effective? There's a doctor shortage if you haven't noticed it. And wouldn't it be amazing if the poorest level of education doctors, of which there are in various parts of our country, were aided in their care were better? And wouldn't it be better if the top doctors had somebody, not a human, but somebody to give them some advice in the very tricky situations that doctors present? That's an AI doctor. Wouldn't it be even nicer if that doctor spoke every language, could deal with every culture and everyone's health problems globally? And wouldn't it be nice if it was free, right? There's every reason to think that that's achievable. Every reason to think that if we combine the work we're doing now in specialized areas of medicine, we can achieve that. And of course, it has to get regulated for safety and things like this. What about education? We spend an awful lot of time in our country complaining about the state of our education. Why don't we just fix it? And not with the usual mechanisms, but rather by coming up with an AI tutor. And this is not an AI tutor that replaces teachers, and we don't replace doctors either. We don't have enough teachers. We have the same problem. What they do is they get better ways of teaching in the student's language. And we all know that everybody learns slightly differently. And so the system is gamified in such a way, the way the gaming works, is it figures out the way you best learn and then delivers it and gets you to your highest potential. You can't argue against me. It's obviously good to take everyone and get to their top potential. Society would be so much more strong. And we can debate all sorts of things about education, but at the end of the day, why don't we just solve the problem using AI? The teachers actually, when you talk to the head of the teachers union, she says she wants this. They want the teachers to be more productive because they actually care about what they're doing. It's obvious. What about diseases? What's interesting about AI is that humans can't do a million combinations of various historical drugs and interactions in an hour. We can't do it in a decade. We can't do it in our lifetimes. But a computer can do that and basically mix and match. And I and others here in the room are funding projects that are essentially chemistry, where you look at all sorts of interesting combinations and various techniques involving AI and quantum allow us to take the drugs that are effective and make them more effective, longer lived, and ultimately more profitable for the corporations that sell them. The important thing here is that the underlying, that the industrialization of these systems in, for example, healthcare, will transform the way we do. And I'm going to come back to some of the more profound changes. But the simple stuff, I want it for our citizens. I want it for myself. I want it for you. I want it for our nation. I want it for our companies. I want it for our profits. I want it for Wall Street. I want it for everybody. And we are the leaders at this. A team here, including a number of my friends, put this together. This report is incredible. Thank you, Tom, and the usual suspects for this. And it's really a study of what is possible with generative AI. And I've worked at Innovation Power for a long time. My own personal view about innovation is that it's going to be more important than hard power and soft power. A long time ago, people figured out there's hard power and soft power. Hard power is the kinetic power, and soft power is marketing and culture and so forth and so on. The world is so complicated now that the way we're going to win is because we're going to innovate our future. And this is going to have all sorts of implications. It's going to mean that the innovators will lead and the people who can't innovate are going to lag, right? So let's consider Afghanistan, just to make a political point. They've managed to take half of their IQ and put them back under the burqa, so forth. That's terrible. Right? It's terrible for many, many reasons, but it also means they're not going to be able to play at this level. It's a permanent harm to their country because they won't be able to innovate because they won't be playing with a full deck. They're going to be playing with a half deck and maybe not as good a deck as the half that they're suppressing. So the point here is we have to get our very top folks working on innovation to lead. And in case you're wondering about innovation, we sort of have forgotten everything about America. Everything that I benefited was based on innovation. The science is invented here, the National Science Foundation. We go through all the things that I personally, or you personally benefited. It's because of an innovation mindset, which is established by people who are since dead, right? That we owe a great gratitude to. The next thing that will happen after we get the doctor and the tutor and the sciences fixed is we're going to start having various forms of very interesting stepwise intelligence. And these systems will be able to give you recipes. They'll be able to say, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve that problem? And you'll see the beginning of thinking. And these are not conscious. I'm not making any claim like that. Please don't write that down and don't tweet it out. The system will have to make a decision. Step one, what do we do? Step two, what do we step three? That's a little bit like humans. Now, eventually what will happen, and this is more speculation, is that you're going to have savants. And these savants will be specialized. There'll be a chemistry savant and a physics savant. And what I'll say to the chemistry savant is learn more chemistry to solve new problems. Today, they can't do it because they can't do math properly. But AI is adding what are called tools, which allow it to call out to get mathematically correct answers. The combination of LLMs and tools and other specialized approaches are going to give us these kinds of savants. They're not going to replace chemists. They're going to make chemists do more chemistry. My own prediction about all of this is that at the end of the day, we're going to say that the AI age doubled the productivity of everything. And by that, I mean us. So if you're a writer, you'll be able to write twice as much or twice as higher quality. Maybe that's better. If you're a business person, you should be able to double your profits. If you're a scientist, you should be able to accelerate your rate of discovery. And the reason I said a half is we have early evidence, for example, that programmers' productivity is near doubled, right? That they can literally they can sketch out what they want and the computer can finish it. And they roughly report a doubling of productivity. I said this to my friend, the famous economist, and he said, "Oh my God." And I said, "Why are you so upset?" And he said, "We don't have models of more than 2 to 3% productivity increase." And I said, "Well, maybe that's your next research project for your graduate student." And he said, "Yes." He now has a whole bunch of postdocs and grad students trying to figure out what does the world like if my prediction, which is obviously optimistic, that our individual productivity doubles in our lifetime. No one's ever seen that before. This is the power of artificial intelligence. The reason that I'm so happy about this, and I've run over, I want to finish up, is that we're at one of these moments where you can feel it's going to change again. And when these things happen, it's really important as a citizen to pay attention, at a minimum, so you can have interesting dinner parties, right? Because people want to know in America what's going to happen next. Okay, so let me tell you what's going to happen next. National security. A lot of people here working on national security. Finally, our military industrial complex is going to have to face the fact that it builds rockets when it should be building bullets, that it uses hardware and not software, that it's run like a 1980s corporation by very courageous people who are subject to these rules. All right? We finally are going to learn in our country how to use software and attritable systems, as I call them, to build extremely powerful defensive systems for our country, which is hugely important. The second thing is we really are going to solve some of the problems that have bedeviled our society for so long. I use the doctor and the tutor as an example, but there are so many. The arrival of an intelligence of a kind that's under our control is a very, very big deal. We need to get ready for that. That's why you should read our report. That's why I'm so happy that you're here. And I'm very, very grateful to be here. Thank you so much.